Welcome to the Waffle Shop podcast. My name's Taylor James. It's a musical. It's not a musical. If you're expecting a musical, it's not a musical.
We can make it a musical.
We can make it a musical.
If you ever grow up and become a bricklayer, I'm going to shoot you.
Oh,
Those words, exactly. He was joking.
That'll do it. That'll keep you away from that. Yeah.
And if I quote made it, it would make all the difficult feelings go away.
But someone who has been on that journey with me from very early on is this man right here, the brilliant Kain. Very grateful that you're here today. And we've spoken quite a lot about food and the impact it can have on your mental health, your physical health, and our relationship with food. Would you like just to kind of give a bit of a brief intro, I guess, to yourself and what you do?
So I got off to a really rocky start with my own journey with wellness and diet, nutrition, food, and everything like that. When I first started trying to improve my health, at what point did the benefit maybe start to plateau? At what point are we just working harder for the sake of working harder with less positive outcome? It very quickly became all about body image, and that created very adverse effects in terms of the outcomes with my food choices. I was constantly thinking I want to make good food choices. I need to make good food choices. But the pressure that I was putting on myself was flipping it to the point where it was causing anxiety that was then resulting in very regrettable food choices. So now I work in the nutrition space and I help people who've also gone down difficult rabbit holes and found themselves in tough spots with food.
And I think it's quite rare for men to talk about their mental health anyway. Obviously, I know it's getting a hell of a lot better with events like this and conversations like this. But I think there's quite a taboo subject when it comes with men talking about food, eating disorder, disordered eating. And it's one of the things that I really connect with. Obviously, we've had many a conversation about this. When it comes to the whole conversation about, I guess, disordered eating and eating disorders, what sparked that journey to okay, I need to talk about my own experiences, and how did it turn almost into the passion and the purpose?
It took me a while to realize how many other guys were struggling with it because I never spoke about it. And then someone encouraged me to actually be honest about it at some point, and the moment I did, not a huge number of guys, but considering the fact that I had a tiny social media following at the time, instantly I got messages from 4 or 5 other guys saying oh my God, you too? Yeah. And that just led me to start pulling on these threads of what's really going on here, because whenever I talk about this, I often get well-intentioned but uninvited tips on how I should be addressing the subject. But I went down all the official channels myself first to try and find support and approach it the right way, and I didn't find that to be super successful. And it was a large combination of things that helped, and through pulling on that thread of what causes this, how can I best help, what do we need to do about it, I just got interested and kind of obsessed with figuring out the problem.
Yeah.
And figuring out why so many people were struggling and not resonating with the kind of help that is available.
Yeah. One of my biggest coping mechanisms, whether you label it as good or bad, it is food. And, if I'm particularly stressed or if I'm having a hard time, I'm going straight to almost overeating. Why do you think, it's probably a bit of a big question, but why do you think there's we rely on food so much? Why do you think for a lot of people food is that thing that we almost overindulge with or binge eat, or in your kind of professional opinion, why food?
We have such a complex relationship with food, and that can start from such a young age. We often talk about, or conversations about substances or alcohol or, other addictive substances or whatever come into play. And food is in this entirely different thing, where this is talked about a lot in this space with food, how if someone's struggling with alcohol, essentially they can live without alcohol, but we can't live without food. And that's kind of the challenge for any of us who do struggle with food in this way, because we can't just not eat. And then if we try to, say, eliminate the foods from our diet that we feel are maybe gateways to things like binge eating, sometimes that can create a very restrictive situation that actually results in more binge eating and makes it even harder. So it's really difficult. And the experience of food is so deep in our subconscious. It's so complex, and finding our way around that, finding ways to respond to what we're feeling, especially around food and everything, it's a real journey.
Yeah. There's one question that I want to ask. Obviously, you work in that space, and obviously you've done a lot of work, like both personally and professionally, when it comes to your relationship with food and educating other people. When it comes to that subject of like diet culture and all of that comes with it, obviously there's always someone telling you that you're either doing it wrong or you should try this, you should try that. How, as someone who works in that space, how do you navigate that? Because I imagine there's quite a lot of it that will go against your core beliefs or what's worked for you. How do you navigate that because it's quite a toxic kind of, I guess, industry to be in, I guess?
Yeah, very polarized opinions, because we all have our own experience of food, right? We all experience it slightly differently. We've all got overlap in our experiences, but then something that resonates with one person and might change one person's life will be completely unconstructive and unhelpful for another person. So as a professional in this space, I guess there's been a bit of a learning curve for me. Like when I first started talking about this kind of stuff, I was very textbook in exactly what I believe. Now, this is good, this is bad, absolutely do this, never do that. And I've really had to come correct with my ability to listen and understand each person's individual situation and help people explore what's going on for them and build their awareness around it, rather than actually walk into it with like a checklist of you should do this, you should do that. Of course, we know the kind of things that are more likely or less likely to produce certain outcomes, but there are so many people trying to package and sell the formula for the perfect diet. And it's a very marketable thing to be able to say, like, I can tell you the secret to perfect diet if you follow these 5 steps. And so, yeah, a lot of people try to package that, but boots on the ground, like working with people one-to-one, it all comes down to understanding our own personal experience, maybe putting aside some comparison and going, how is this working out for me? Like this particular choice or that particular choice, did I have a good experience with that? Did this work long term? Sorry. Is this helpful? Is it unhelpful? You know?
With this kind of stuff, like I find it almost quite predatory. And I'm sorry if there's any like PTs or fitness coaches in there, but like there's one of my biggest pet peeves of me, where especially when I've got like quite almost like a difficult relationship with the way I look. Sometimes there's days where my internal doesn't quite match up to my external, and then there'll be days when I'll be feeling really good, and I'll look in the mirror and I'm like, the confidence is gone. And sometimes I find, especially being like active, like you'll get like a DM off like a coach who like, hey, like I'm looking for 5 guys who have like are looking to lose like so much body weight, like, or I can fix this for you. And honestly, it's those days when it always seems to be like I'm on one of those days as well. It's like getting caught. Like you never get caught on the door handle when you're having a good day. It's always on. It's always on one of those days when everything is going wrong, and then you catch yourself on the door handle
Every time.
But it's similar to that. Like when I get one of those DMs, like, "Hey, like I can fix this for you," and I have a real, I guess, bugbear with people who are trying to fix me, because I think all of this kind of stuff like is such a journey. Like I think what works for you isn't going to work for me, and this is why I appreciate the work that you do, because it's very. Well, what have you tried? What hasn't worked? What do you like doing? What do you not like doing? Because I think it's similar when it comes to the mental health conversation. Like, there is a lot of advice out there, lots of incredible advice, but I struggle to meditate. I enjoy it on the odd occasion, but I struggle to sit there and kind of calm. However, journaling for me, I could sit there and write pages and pages and pages, and immediately I know that's what's going to make me feel better. I imagine there's a lot of competition in doing what you're doing, and obviously there might be, in personal opinion, professional opinion, there's might be like a lot of bad advice out there. How do you almost stand out from the crowd or handle the frustration of that kind of bad advice?
It's a daily practice.
Yeah.
I guess I've just had to be patient. When people feel listened to in regards to their experience, that usually ends up creating the kind of situation that is more helpful with nutrition. I'm glad you mentioned things like meditation and all these kind of stress management practices there. That's a really great example, because meditation doesn't resonate with me either. And this is the kind of thing that we can talk about in regards to food. Like, I was told so many times, like when I was very much struggling with anxiety, like I still manage a lot of anxiety. Like, I've struggled with OCD like my entire life. Like, not that kind of jokey, cartoony OCD that people say, I'm a bit OCD. Like,
Yeah.
no, like OCD is like a thing with the intrusive thoughts and the compulsions and everything. So people often talk to me about meditation and all this stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't, if I close my eyes to try and meditate, for example, I'm just flooded with intrusive thoughts that are too big for me to kind of regulate through. So I need to do other things, like, for example, music. Like I sing, I play guitar, I do other things that allow me to still be mindful and practice things like breath regulation and presence in the moment and grounding in physical sensations and all the things, like directing my attention somewhere that's helpful rather than somewhere that's unhelpful. For me right now, at this point in my own journey, like, I just need a musical instrument or something to engage with. Like you mentioned with journaling, like I need something to do that with, like, rather than just expect myself to, like, I'm going to sit here and meditate like a monk. And I guess in this space where we've constantly got people saying, like, I need 5 guys who want to lose 20 pounds by Tuesday.
Yeah.
We could unpack what's going on there for a while, like, because there's a lot of unhelpful stuff within the fitness industry in terms of people get into fitness because they're passionate about fitness. And then there are all these people who are very predatory, who approach that space and say to new personal trainers, hey, I can help you make this much money in this much time. I can help make you a successful fitness professional. And they encourage people to do these kind of like cold outreach approaches.
Yeah.
And I use the word unhelpful a lot, but yeah, it's just.
I thought it's a stronger word there. That I feel like you're kind of being
I'm trying
respectable.
yeah, it's shitty.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah. To be fair, speaking of S words, there's quite a theme that I've the conversation that I've had both on the stage and like through the festival, and it's around the topic of stress. I feel like everyone here has kind of come to this weekend and this event and just like, this is for me. Like, I'm doing this, I'm like getting involved, I'm connecting with people, I'm connecting with like the earth. You know, we did the cacao ceremony yesterday and I felt zen for the first time in a very long time. Even the lady who opened the stage for us today, we did a breathing technique and I was like, okay, that sorted me out now. I felt like I could function. When it comes to stress, it's something that I'm exploring quite a lot at the moment. We've had a conversation about it kind of before we hit the record button, and the exploration of kind of like cortisol levels, and obviously when you're experiencing chronic stress, the impact it can have both physically and mentally. And I think it's becoming almost like a bit of a buzzword. It's becoming almost like a badge of honor. And I'm not saying that to kind of point fingers. I'm saying it because that this is me saying this, like almost pointing the finger at myself, that I'm almost like forcing myself to be busy, like I'm running at a rate just because, whether it's trying to impress people on social media or I'm almost, what I personally think is I feel like I'm running from something. So I feel like if I stop, I'm going to have to address something. What that is, I don't know yet. So I'm kind of keeping on this kind of, I guess, mission that I seem to kind of place upon myself. In the area that you work in, obviously you talk a lot about like stress management. From a personal point of view, how do you manage your stress, firstly?
I've got to stay really aware of the things that drive me to overwork. Like this whole idea of if I'm not working conspicuously hard, then I'm not trying hard enough. This whole thing of guilt around not hustling.
Yeah.
Like I grew up with a lot of that. Like I watched my dad work really, really hard. He was a bricklayer. He would be leaving the house before it was light, coming back covered in cement dust and everything like that just before dinner. And he never once told me that I should do his job. He actually said to me so many times, if you ever grow up and become a bricklayer, I'm going to shoot you. Those words, exactly. He was joking.
That'll do it. That'll keep you away from that.
Yeah. And I watched him struggle with migraines and all these pains in his body and everything his entire life. And he's still going now. He doesn't know how to stop. But watching that as a kid, like something in my mind just came to this conclusion that, oh, okay, that's how I need to prove that I'm trying hard enough. If I'm not working that hard, then I'm lazy. And fundamental core beliefs and everything, it's a terrible thing to be lazy. So managing my own relationship with stress often comes down to self-awareness, being really aware of things like diminishing returns when it comes to effort. How much effort is going into this particular thing? And at what point did the benefit maybe start to plateau? At what point are we just working harder for the sake of working harder with less positive outcome? We see that happen with diet a lot, like trying to make your diet like better and better and better and better. But the point at which it was optimally good for you in terms of energy invested and positive outcomes gained, that passed like a long time ago. And yet we're still here trying to make it better and better and better.
It's surreal. Like I don't know why we seem to be running at this rate, because it's not sustainable. And this is why I'm so grateful like events like this happen, because they are forcing us to stop. You know, I've seen people trying yoga for the first time. They're trying like breath work for the first time. And they're like, I didn't know this could help me in the way that it's helping me. And I think it's quite a beautiful kind of realization sometimes that like you get to a point where I'm so overworked, so burnt out, but taking that moment is just, yeah, it's a real game changer to be able to take that bit of a breather and have that self-awareness. And I think whether you're male, female, or whatever you kind of like identify as, it's kind of, it's okay. It's okay to take that like pause, that step back, because life is going to go on regardless. So take that kind of step back and recover. It's recovery, isn't it? It's the same way if you went to the gym and obviously you really kind of like pushed it and like you had like a great workout, you probably couldn't do that same workout the day after, because your body needs time to recover. And I think whether it's stress, whether it's day-to-day life, work especially, you can take that time. One thing I do find fascinating about you and your journey is that music obviously has played a huge part in your life. You mentioned it about like being a good coping mechanism to like help managing like your stress levels. You're very humble, but like you've supported Slash on tour at Wembley. Like you've done all these like incredible things. When it comes to music, I'm a big believer in people having like these songs and these kind of like moments that they've had a soundtrack to it. Is there a song that would kind of like describe your journey so far?
Oof. I listen to a lot of songs ironically.
Yeah.
Like my sense of humor like comes out. So sometimes when I'm going through like a really difficult time, a song will appear in my head and it will be like Everyone's a Winner by Hot Chocolate.
Okay.
Like songs that are like really inappropriate for the actual events.
Yeah.
Because I think my mind just tries to keep me kind of giggling or like tries to keep me entertained. So yeah, I get a lot of songs that appear in my mind at different, like in relation to different points in my life that just don't fit what's going on at all, but it always gave me a laugh. And things like things like Everyone's a Winner by Hot Chocolate. And
That was quite clearly that was there.
I've been trying, just for my own enjoyment at home, like I've been trying to put together an acoustic cover of that for a while.
Okay.
And it's coming together. Like it's all right.
I'll wait for that.
It's been on my mind. Yeah.
Okay, to be fair, I don't actually know what to say to that. But I'm not judging, because I feel like when it comes to music, it's the same with coping mechanisms. It's the same with anything. If it gets you through the day and it puts a smile on your face, I don't believe there's anyone that can tell you it's the wrong thing or the wrong thing to listen to. I listen to a lot of Pitbull, which divides a lot of people. He's an instant good mood for me, because he just reminds me of like good times and stuff like that. Is there any pivotal song that takes you back to a moment in your life that you might not be able to listen to, or it kind of soundtracks a particularly tough time for you?
Ironically, you mentioned Slash before and the whole Guns N' Roses thing. When I was opening for Slash's band in 2010, 2011, and 2014, I did tours through Asia and then the 2014 UK tour. I was not in a great place. And it's actually ruined Guns N' Roses for me.
Oh, wow.
Like, I used to be such a huge fan of Guns N' Roses. And so, like, opening for Slash, and it was one of those moments. It was a meet your hero moment. It would not only meet a hero, but tour and all that kind of thing. And, like, Slash is such a lovely guy, truly. And he hires really great guys to work with him. And I was always so blown away and just so grateful for how cool that group were. Like Slash's band, when he's doing Slash with Miles Kennedy and the Co-Conspirators, like they're awesome dudes. But personally, like I wasn't in the greatest place. I was doing these really big tours and then arriving home in Australia and sleeping in the back of my truck outside my friend's house, because I just had to constantly be available for the band that I was working with at the time in the event that an opportunity came up. So my work life was very sporadic. I couldn't hold down a job anywhere that was very good because I'd constantly be leaving and going and doing things. So yeah, there was a lot of instability in my life. And although those tours were just incredible, I can't listen to something like Sweet Child of Mine or Paradise City or anything anymore without just viscerally being taken back to that place. Yeah.
If you don't mind, obviously diving into a little bit of that, because obviously I think a lot of people will look at, obviously what I've just said, it was just like, you would think in that period of time, if like you're like on a high, you're on tour with one of the biggest rock stars on the planet. What was going on? Because obviously from the outside looking in, you would think this guy is on cloud nine, he's living his best life, he's living the dream. But obviously that wasn't the case. What was going on? Obviously, if you feel comfortable enough to share, like, what was going on?
I believed that if I created a career and a persona that was big enough, cool enough, it would make all the other things that I was struggling with in my life like go away. I've always struggled with a lot of social anxiety, a lot of like just anxiety in general, a lot of different things like that. I've struggled with communication in personal relationships a lot. Social situations didn't make sense to me as a kid and as a teenager. That's one of the reasons I got into music, because I felt like playing in a band gave me a reason to be invited to the party. Okay. So if I was doing something, I felt like I had a reason to be there and something to talk about, whereas I just didn't know what to do. Like, what, we all just stand here and hang out? Is this what socializing is? So I thought that if I just got successful enough, if I did something impressive enough, and if I quote made it, it would make all the other, all the difficult feelings go away. But it didn't. It's like, okay, you've done this stuff. And I always thought that once I'd proved to myself that I was good enough to go and stand on those stages and play on those stages, I thought that I would experience this relief that was like, okay, now you're free to go and enjoy the rest of your life and explore other things. Go be a music teacher if you want, go be whatever. And it just made me hungrier. Like it made me feel like I needed to do more and more and more. And it just kept snowballing, and it just made me hungrier, and not in like a good motivational way.
Yeah. It was almost like there was like an emptiness there. You're trying to constantly feel something that was just obviously almost like a bottomless pit.
Yeah, and distract myself from what I was feeling, manage things, however we want to describe it. Yeah, constantly fill that pit.
I think it's so common, and I've had quite a lot of conversations on this podcast, and I feel like it's the idea of almost like perfectionism as well, isn't it? I feel like we're always chasing something that doesn't quite exist, and we forget about the journey or like the moments that are happening like right now. What made the switch? Like, was there like a particular like turning point, or almost like a rock bottom, or what was it that was like, okay, this music thing, this way of living, it isn't for me. I need to explore what is happening to me.
I got a job as a session guitar player, like when I moved to the UK. Like that was one of the reasons I moved from Australia to the UK, because there was more music industry work in the UK than there was in Australia. So I relocated to the UK and got through like an audition process that landed me a full-time job touring with a band that was, headlining full-time, a band called The Wedding Present. They were really successful in the early 90s, and the guy who runs that band, he's been really smart about how he ran it. The band still has this really big kind of cult following, and we were headlining places like the Roundhouse in London and all the academies, and I was literally on tour for 18 months. And I remember being in a hotel room in Spain and having what I can only describe as this weird epiphany, where I was looking at the other people who were doing jobs similar to me that were 10 years older than me, and I realized, oh my God, I don't want that life. I realized that I'd done everything that I set out to do and more. It's like I'd proved to myself that I could exist in that space. I proved to myself that I could be that guy. I wasn't the part of the opening band anymore. I was part of the headliner. I was on the world tours. I was doing all that kind of stuff. And as clear as day, I remember thinking, I can see exactly where this is going, and I want none of it. Because we see, the Mick Jaggers, the Slashers, the people who are at the absolute top.
Yeah.
But, I'm not a songwriter. I'm a session guitarist. It was never my goal to be the guy. I just wanted to be in the band.
Yeah.
And I finally gained the professional experience that made me need to let go of this.
No, it's powerful. I think one of the biggest things from that is like it's okay to make the change. Like we had a talk earlier, and then he mentioned something incredible about like making the jump. It's like we almost wait, or the traumatic thing happens, or the big life event happens, and then we make the change. I feel like it's so incredible to be around a bunch of people who are having this kind of like, just don't wait for the change. Like if you've got like a passion for something, or you want to do something different, don't wait, because you don't want to get to that kind of like that age, or to that mindset, or for that bad thing to happen to be like, I wish I did that. Like what happened with my mom is the driving force behind everything. It's I struggle to say no to things, because I've seen the most incredible, beautiful, fit, like woman have her life taken away from her. Like she was up at like 6 a.m. every morning, like hoovering her AstroTurf with like a fag and a coffee in her hand, like just doing what she needed to do, to now requiring 24-hour care. And it's just it kind of breaks my heart sometimes. I'm just like, I just don't, like, God forbid that was to ever happen to me. And I have those, like, I wish I did that. I'd rather do it and regret it than regret not doing it. And I love hearing stories like this, as much as like I don't like obviously that people go through the struggle, but it's always that kind of reassurance that it's okay to make that leap. It's okay to take that jump, because you've got a whole portfolio almost of facts to say that you are going to be okay. Like you're going through it, but you're going to be okay. You've been through it. You've probably been through worse, but it's just, I guess, having that reassurance that, it's okay to make those changes. When it comes to the next steps, obviously you're now working in the nutrition space, you're helping so many people understand their bodies and why they, their behaviors with food and how they respond to certain like stress triggers. What's next? Like what's the dream goal for you?
That's an amazing question. It's been on my mind a lot recently. Stress management is something I'm really pivoting heavily towards because I see stress management, more specifically distress tolerance and resilience, coming up in people's relationships with food so much. I want to move away from the box of being a nutrition guy or a disordered eating guy and lean into distress management, resilience, stress management, all that kind of stuff. Because sometimes I've just found that when we fixate too heavily on specifically what's going on with the diet, we got dietitians for that. They do a great job. I'd like to work alongside people like dietitians and therapists, looking at more of the practical application of stress management and resilience and distress tolerance. Because dealing with difficult feelings, difficult situations, if we can manage those situations better, then we set ourselves up to just have more rewarding experiences with food and any other thing that we're doing for our well-being. So yeah, that's the direction that I'm pivoting in at the moment. So thank you for teeing me up for that, by the way.
You're welcome. No, but it's important. I think especially it's quite I think it's the high on everyone's priority list at the moment, especially the conversations that I'm having. It is around stress and how we manage it, because I think there is a lot of people experiencing burnout, and we're just kind of, again, we're just carrying on, we're just powering through, which in one respect is great. It's the same analogy, I guess, as like the elastic band. The longer you pull it, the harder the snap is going to be. So we need to kind of have these conversations, and we need to address it and stop almost wearing it as a badge of honor. Again, I'm kind of talking to myself here to like stop it, take a break. If there was anyone listening to this, or obviously the people listening into this here, is there like a key piece of kind of almost like a golden nugget of information that has helped you, or is key to the conversation that we've just had, that you'd like to, I guess, pass on today?
Something that struck me this weekend that I feel has been talked a lot about here at the festival is letting go of the idea of the fix. Like, I need to fix myself. I need to fix this thing, as in I need to make this feeling go away or make this experience go away. I tried very hard to make certain feelings, certain discomforts, certain things go away for a very long time. And everything that I engaged with in an attempt to make a difficult feeling go away only ever came back to bite me in one way or the other. So creating a sense of security inside ourselves, even when we are experiencing some degree of distress, letting go of the idea of fixing, letting go of the idea of like, oh, I'm going to find the magical thing that's going to make the difficult part of my experience disappear. There's so much peace that comes with acknowledging that sometimes we're just going to have to allow part of ourselves to be uncomfortable, part of ourselves to be distressed. And the people upstairs are cheering. I love it. But yeah, that's essentially it, to let go of the idea of fixing and go, what would it be like to allow parts of myself to be without letting them run the show?
It's big, powerful. One final question for you. It's a big one. If there was a movie made about Marcus Kain, his journey so far, everything he's been through, what song would be playing as the credits rolled?
A song called Snake Oil by Steve Earle. That song was like my favorite song as like a 6-year-old, because whenever I rode around in my dad's truck, he had this big like 1990 F200 or something like that. And to me as a kid, it felt like a monster truck. And I'd be riding around in this big truck when I was a kid, and he'd have Steve Earle's Copperhead Road album on, and Snake Oil was my favorite song. So that song is like my childhood.
Yeah. I can see it in your face then that you kind of glazed a little bit.
It makes me very happy. Yeah.
No, Marcus, this has been brilliant. Long time coming again. Like we say this all the time, even though we talk quite often. But thank you so much for joining me for a waffle. Like every time I get to talk to you, it's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you for joining me.
Dude, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.